Hey guys, that was what I would consider to be a doozy of a court date today. So basically what we saw, I got here a little late because I had my daughter's field trip to deal with today. And so when I got here, it was actually nicely timed because I was here about 10-20 minutes talking to somebody before they actually called the two sheriff's deputies in to court. What we found out is that the sheriff's deputy that took the report earlier in the year, she took the information, she looked up, the minimum amount what she was supposed to do. She went to the school. She supposedly interviewed Gabriel for about 5 minutes. She does not remember the circumstances in which she interviewed him. But she spent she said a total of 15 minutes on the investigation, which includes reading the report that was filed for her to go out there, and then also generating her own report. So 15 minutes in total investigating, and this was about being hit with a belt. She had him lift up her shirt, she said, his shirt, sorry. She had him lift up his shirt, and she saw no evidence of abuse whatsoever. She never talked to anybody else. She didn't interview the teacher. She didn't interview anybody else. She basically concluded with that. I'll get to the interesting part after I tell you all this. So the second sheriff that came up, I can only tell you that it was a very interesting testimony because that's the best I can describe it. One of the best things about the law is that what you do on the stand says a lot. The first sheriff was really nervous to a point where like a simple question was asked of her and she couldn't understand it, just because I think she was just so nervous. And I don't know if she was nervous for other reasons, which I wouldn't know what those reasons are, but she seemed pretty nervous. The second guy, he kept saying that he did not know what Gabriel was wearing. He doesn't remember. He described being in a room with Gabriel, and then he said that he was in the doorway with Gabriel. He had Gabriel lift up his shirt. He saw no harm to his torso. This was after the call from the security guard at the gain office in April that he reported, and he reported to the residents. And upon reporting, he claims that he saw no evidence of abuse. So the 3-page scars report done by the security guard at the gain office, which describes in detail all the burns on his head, the marks on his forehead, the burns on his arms and stuff like that. This sheriff did not see him like that. I believe it's the same day, an hour later. So he got the call around 4:56 in the afternoon, completed the call by 7:15, showed up to the house at like 5:56. I'm sorry, not 7:15, 6:15, something like that. It was fairly, it was within an hour. He didn't file his findings. He didn't do his report until about 2 hours later, in which he closed the case as a not domestic violence. He closed it as a public disturbance. However, interesting enough, he noted that it was a DCFS case because Pearl had showed him all these DCFS papers, and he noted supervisor Dixon, whoever this person is, in regards to the DCFS case, that he just remembered off the top of his head because he says he doesn't recall having his notebook, nor does he keep any of his notebooks after he uses them. Even in case he has to come to court, he doesn't keep any of these things. So it was really interesting to watch him talk, because He did specifically say that he does not remember what Gabriel was wearing, and then he did say Gabriel was wearing a t-shirt, and then he said he doesn't remember about the lighting in the bedroom. He described going from the living room into the bedroom. There was a long hallway, but he doesn't remember what the lighting was in the bedroom, and it was around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon in April, so we can assume that during that time there was 12-hour days, which means that the days were longer and there was more light during the day. So we can assume that in the room, if there was windows and nothing was closed up, that we can assume that it was pretty well lit. So it was, like I said, it was an interesting testimony to watch and listen to in regards to this particular case and what the deputies say that he actually witnessed or did not witness. And again, he said specifically that he did not see any bruises or marks on Gabriel. He did happen to see an abrasion on Gabriel's forehead, and he believed that was consistent with the bike fall that we all know was not an actual story. That it wasn't something that actually happened. The thing that I was going to say that's most interesting about what we heard from the deputies today is that they've been fighting tooth and nail. The whole department, the LASD, has been fighting tooth and nail against the public defender's office in regards to not releasing any of their records or any of the information that they had obtained in their internal affairs investigations. Because they feel as though what happens within their department stays within their department, and it has nothing to do with the public. The public should not know, and they don't have the right to have an opinion as to whether or not a sheriff's deputy receives any kind of punishment or any kind of reprimand or anything like that. With that being said, now that the deputies have both appeared in court, they have both sworn on that great book. You know, they did the swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I can't promise you that the majority of what they say was completely the truth. But what I can tell you is that it was interesting testimony to watch, even in regards to all the evidence that was already there. There was a 3-page report done by security guard in regards to what Gabriel looked like that day, that same day that the sheriff's deputy showed up to his house and said there was only a scratch on his forehead. There was evidence that this child was abused. If you lifted up his shirt, and neither of these deputies saw his back, and they saw his torso. And I can't tell you what kind of abuse was on the torso, but I can tell you for 100% sure that there were scars from months of abuse, specifically stated by the coroner's office, who is a doctor, by the coroner's office, who said there was scars from months and months of abuse on his back, on his legs. Remember, Gabriel had a hard time walking. I mean, he did go through it pretty well, but his walking wasn't all that fun because he usually had some kind of burn mark or some kind of damage to his feet. So all I can say is I don't know if this deputy was lying, or if he saw the wrong child, or if he just didn't do his job at all, or none of them did their jobs at all, or I don't know. All I can tell you is today was a really interesting day. Thanks for joining, guys, and see you later. We're back again tomorrow.